Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you for joining me here. Hope you're having a great day. Let's take another look here at SUI, see what's going on. This is a bearish type of pattern that we're seeing, but also construed as bullish depending on how you look at it. And that's the funny thing about the current market, folks, is we're getting a lot of false positives and a lot of like kind of fake outs. Generally speaking though, when you see a price action establishing lower lows and lower highs, kind of rejecting off its local point of control, it's usually not a great sign, especially when Bitcoin is on the retracement and we're seeing this coin pull back harder. I'm not telling you to short this coin, I'm just proposing some constructive thought process here, and to maybe consider waiting to find a good trade before before it gets worse. And what I mean by that here is if we look at the charts, we can see a lot of liquidation below the price action. We're closer to that upper or that larger range of liquidation at 210, and there's a decent chance we do see that happen if Bitcoin comes 83 or 82K in the future here. So just know that exists. Well, I think the bottom could drop out any minute just based on how poorly it's performing versus Bitcoin. That's the main reason why I say that. However, we don't just take a pattern here, a bull flag or bearish type of divergence and just take a trade based on that one thing. We want to look at a lot of stuff here, see what's going on. So that's why we're here. Now, when we look at the charts, we can recognize from a macro perspective, further upside it almost seems inevitable. There's tons of liquidation on the upside, a lot of juicy profit targets there for market makers. But we can see here liquidation delta is starting to taper off. We've been overextended for some time. There's a solid chance we see a little bit more profit taken before the price pulls continues higher. However, if we pull back too far, it might be very difficult to recover as well. So we're going to look at some trend lines to kind of see if that helps clarify some things. But liquidation delta is still bullish. I'm not trying to say that we're not going to go up. I'm just saying it would make sense to go down first, just based on the fact that Bitcoin is kind of, this coin's underperforming versus Bitcoin. And those are just kind of one of the main outliers I like to look for when I trade coins, the upside or downside. Now, I don't short SUI anymore because it's just such a volatile coin. It makes it's difficult to find profit to the downside because it moves so quickly and it's hard to find it. But the key takeaway here is that 225 is that local area of open interest. We're below that. We close below 225 roughly. I'm rounding down a little. Then you're probably going to find further downside here. In other words, we need to close above this local point of control at like that 223 to 225 range. So that's kind of where we're at there. When we look at the macro, more larger time frames, we can recognize we haven't truly broken free from our 50-day SMA. Most coins are exuding the same behavior, so we can't presume that we're back on track completely until I say a 240 or 250 or higher. I kind of mentioned that on Saturday. I'll stick to my analysis here recently and just recognize that while we're performing well in this upward ascending channel, we haven't broken the macro perspective yet. We're also still under the 20-day SMA for the moment, and that's usually not a great sign. So I think 225 or higher today would be helpful, but 250 or higher overall is absolutely what we're looking for. We're still not over 50 on the RSI. We keep kind of getting rejected by that midline there. While we're over the moving average, and that's generally a good sign, we're seeing a lot of conflicting information on the daily. But just know this, folks, it's nothing to do with this coin specifically. Most coins are looking the same on the daily time frame. There's not much different there in that sense. What is different though is the shorter term trends here. That's where coins tend to separate themselves, if you will. So if we kind of look at this here, we're working ourselves into a lower low, lower high pattern. We're tentatively below 223, so hypothetically, scalping short right now would make sense. And then if we take a look here, of course, we can recognize that we're right here at 50 on the RSI on the 4-hour. So if we don't hold this level soon, we continue to maintain this range, the likelihood of further downside is higher. Okay, so that's really just things I try to look for. We're under the 20-day SMA. We do have some support, and both previous and based on this local SMA at about 212, 210. So if you look at liquidation, you can kind of recognize that 210 would be the next logical pivot point if the price were to come back down. So hypothetically, we see the 210 range. That would be a logical place for me to consider a long, pending Bitcoin hasn't lost its macro or its local structure, if you will, and it's still looking pretty decent in the 83 to 85K range. So overall, I don't think this is terrible, but we're seeing early signs of divergence. But the truth is, we're still ascending. We're still respecting this ascending trend line. We're above the key levels here I feel that are important. We're just seeing some smaller time frame divergences that may end up becoming something bigger here soon. So I wouldn't recommend taking along with this coin just yet. I think it's still a little premature. I would personally wait for the 210 to $2 range if I'm going to consider a long. Okay. All right, folks. I hope that makes sense. I described it correctly. Thank you so much for watching. Join us over on Twitter, Telegram, and Discord too. I got a lot of good, super relevant information. I think that's important. It's all there for you if you need it. And obviously join us over on our Discord too. We took some nice profits this weekend from, what was it, Bitcoin. What we took, well, that was AVAX, sorry. That was last week. Yeah, we took 27% on a Bitcoin short over the weekend. So that worked out. We had to close our Solana trade a little early, even though it's in profit now. It was best to be safer than sorry. All right, thanks again. We'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself out there. Bye-bye.